This is Boston Lanka News, bringing you news, views and entertainment from Boston and USA. I'm Vayoni Dimel. When a society loses confidence in law enforcement and judicial authorities, it is a testimony of the effectiveness of the law and order in that country. Sri Lanka is gradually becoming a lawless society according to many political observers. If the person is well connected to the ruling political leaders, that person has nothing to worry even if he commits murder or rape or any other atrocities. On the other hand, if the person has angered the ruling political leaders, then it would be better for that person to leave the country rather than suffering, according to some analysts. We spoke to attorney at law Saliya Pieris, a leading attorney who is also Eisenhower Fellow who has interests in protecting civil liberties and human rights, strengthening of democracy, rule of law and independence of the judiciary in Sri Lanka. Attorney Pieris, let's talk about the general law and order situation in Sri Lanka. We always had issues with law enforcement in the past, but never had in this proportion. We never had a DIG arrested on contract killing. Today the people have no respect for police, as the police have to do what some political thugs ask them to do. How did we come to this stage?
Without commenting on an ongoing case as such, I think one issue we have with the police force is the discipline in the police force, and also the fact that the police, at least some officers of the police, are using their powers for private gain. So I think this is where it is necessary to have an independent police force and independent of influence from the politicians, but also I think there is a need to professionalize the police force and to weed out those who are corrupt. But the problem here is sometimes these officers who are corrupt have the blessings of certain politicians, and very often you find that the politicians tend to shield these officers who are corrupt. And we know that with the abolition of at least with the National Police Commission's powers being taken away, we know that most of those powers have been given to the Public Service Commission, but quite a few of those powers relating to transfer have been delegated. So as a result, you don't have the same position we had during the 17th Amendment. During the 17th Amendment, there was a relatively independent police force, and you had a body right on top which was absolutely independent and which used to exercise its powers. But now I think what happens is that the police in this country has been greatly politicized. So definitely, if we want the police to be more disciplined, more professional, you have to make it independent. And I think there is nothing short of the provisions of the 17th Amendment being restored. Without that, you will continue to find these allegations of corruption in the police force. Certainly, without commenting on the ongoing case, but it is stunning when you see very senior police officers being arrested on charges of murder and being accused of having been involved in contract killings. So I think it's a reflection on what the police force today. And, it is high time that we take steps to remedy this situation.
What we have seen recently is if you have the right political connection, you will be treated differently. We saw that in the case of Tangala Provincial Council member who was allegedly killed, a UK citizen, and raped his fiancée. Then Duminda Silva, then Malaka, son of Mervyn Silva, who was allegedly attacked an army officer. The list goes on and on. You cannot blame people for losing their trust and confidence, not only police, but even the court system.
Yeah, what I think in this situation is that you have to uh, to reduce the influence politicians have on this entire law and order system. Now we see a spate of incidents where petty politicians, the Pradesh Sabha members, Pradesh Sabha chairman are involved in various incidents all over the country. Now, these petty politicians have to be controlled. I mean, the fact that they are acting with impunity, that they are running riot, is an indication that the authorities have lost control, or that the authorities don't want to control them. So this is where I strongly feel that we have to take the politicians away, take out their influence over the law and order system.
Let's come back to courts. When people cannot get justice from court system, where can they go? You may not agree, but even courts have been politicized, according to many legal analysts.
Well, the problem, I think one problem we have is you can come to courts, but even to come to courts, you need evidence. You need the police to have done the groundwork. The groundwork is that the police would have had to investigate properly. We know that so many cases collapse, so many prosecutions crash because the police have not done a proper investigation. So it's well and good that the courts are there, but it is the police is the first point of contact. And if the police don't file a proper case, if they don't investigate properly, then many cases are bound to crash. But having said that, we must also note that there are certain police officers who have shown their willingness to be courageous, to be independent, and to take firm decisions. There are very good officers. And I think there must be a system where these officers are protected and also that they are recognized and that they must feel that they are rewarded for what they do. But all this boils down to if you don't have an independent police force, if you are allowing politicians to at different stages to interfere with the appointments, not only with the appointments, promotion, now we know that there was a time when there were to become the OIC of a particular police station, you had to bring a chit from an organizer, from a party organizer. Now, when that type of situation happens, good police officers who don't want to run behind politicians, they are placed in a quandary. So I think where law and order is concerned, I think one prime area which has to be corrected and which has to be reformed is the police force. And I think without doing that, without depoliticizing the police force, without taking out from the police the control of the politicians, that I think nothing will happen regarding the law and order situation.
How can we address this politicization of the police and to a certain extent the judicial system? Any suggestions to make things better?
I think there has to be a culture of independence. This is the culture which is at the more presently in our country, where for everything politicians think that they can interfere. Politicians can just ignore. Politicians or officials can just ignore the rule of law. I think that culture has to change. Now, for example, we see a spate of incidents where, under the guise of road expansion, under the guise of urban development, we find that buildings are being demolished, sometimes forcibly. Without there are provisions in the law. For example, you have the Land Acquisition Act. There is a act relating to road development. Without resorting to the procedures in the law, you find politicians and sometimes officials taking the law into their hand and say, we have decided to expand this road, we are demolishing this. It can trigger for the provisions of the law. So I think if we want to have an independent police force, if we want to restore law and order, have rule of law, you must have politicians, officials respecting legal provisions. If you don't respect the legal provisions, if you demolish buildings, if you demolish walls of houses, without taking the steps under the law, then I think there is something absolutely wrong in this country. So I think the starting point is that politicians, police officers, officials, courts, or we have to keep in mind that there is a law in this country, and the law has to be adhered to.
Where is the Bar Association stands? Some say the Bar Association is also politicized with lawyers with strong political affiliations in the leadership. You think Bar Association is doing its share in fighting for the independence of the judiciary and rule of law in Sri Lanka?
I agree with you. The Bar Association has a huge role really to play related to protecting the rule of law. But to be fair by the Bar Association, I think the Bar Association, especially under the present uh, President, Mr. Pujay Surya, and the Deputy President, Prasanna Java, I think they have taken steps in this regard. To give one example, there is a committee which has been established called the Rule of Law Committee, which is headed by a senior uh, lawyer. And that committee has issued a number of statements. We found the Bar Association intervening in the Mahatale mass graves matter. The magistrate had allowed that intervention. So I think there are very positive steps the Bar Association has taken over the last few months. Of course, at the same time, we have to understand the Bar Association has to be careful. It must not be seen to be political. It has to take the principle stand. That is very important, because otherwise you will find a segment of the bar. If a segment of the bar feels that the bar is politicized, then they might not cooperate with the association. But I think the Bar Association has acted quite commendably. I think it's really not it is not fair to say that the Bar Association has not done its role. Perhaps it can. Perhaps that over the years we should have been more vocal. But I think during the impeachment of the 43rd Chief Justice, the Bar Association played quite a role, and you found almost 3,000 members of the bar met on the 15th of December at a general meeting. So I think in all fairness, I think lawyers have played the part. I think the lawyers have done quite a bit in trying to protect the rule of law in this country. But we must understand it is not only the lawyers who have to play that role. One can't say, well, the bar must move with the matter. But I think there are other people also, the other segments of society, who have to take on a more proactive role. Now, for instance, I have my personal view is that the people in business, the people who have so much at stake, I think a lot of people are silent. Even about atrocities, even about police brutalities. So many tend to turn a blind eye. Until it happens to one of them, they tend to turn a blind eye. Now, we know that there are sometimes deaths in police custody. What have we as a community done about those? So I think we must have a proactive bar, a proactive and a non-political bar must be there. But I think it is not only the lawyers, but other segments of society also have to play a role, including other professionals, those in business, who they have a lot at stake to ensure that there is rule of law in the long term. For the long term, in the long term interest of this country, it is there must be a rule of law. There must be respect for the law. But now, I think one complaint which I have is about the silence of the people who simply just looking on and waiting. And I have come across instances in a certain area. There was a demolition process carried out by a particular politician without resorting to any of the provisions of the law. But we find the people who were affected, they were unwilling. They were unwilling to go into court. Now, if people who are affected they sleep over their rights. What can lawyers or judges do?
In your view, Attorney Pieris, what are the steps that can be taken to further strengthen the independence of judiciary in Sri Lanka?
I know what happened during the impeachment of Dr. Shirani Bandaranaike. And the bar has clearly stated, has clearly made its position known that what happened was unacceptable. And I think that there is no question about it. But where do we move on from now? How do we strengthen the independence of the judiciary? There must be some scheme, a judicial code of ethics introduced in this country. I think in the long term, we must go beyond the present time we must look ahead. And I think there must be a judicial code of ethics, just as much as there is a code of ethics for judges. There must be a code of ethics, just as much as there is a code of ethics for lawyers. There must be a code of ethics for the judiciary, and also perhaps there must be a code of ethics for parliamentarians. Now we know that in the United Kingdom, in the United States, these codes are there, codes of ethics, and there must be a mechanism to ensure that these codes are adhered to. So I think one practical way is to introduce a judicial code of ethics and then bring in certain practices, certain best practices. For instance, even upon retirement, how would judges be appointed to other posts, or do judges not accept any other appointment after retirement? Or if they do, how is it done? So all these things, I think one way is we must have a judicial code of ethics for judges and a code of best practices. Perhaps also it should be there must be a code of ethics applicable to parliamentarians also. Then I think even relating to issues such as transfers, perhaps it's a good idea for there to be some sort of transfer policy, a transparent transfer policy, so that any transfers which are done will not be misunderstood. Because sometimes it may well be that the authorities are transferring with the best of intentions. It may well be. But some other people might find room to criticize these transfers. So on the other hand, if you have a transparent policy, a transfer policy, some of these criticisms might not arise. The other thing is, I think, very important, is the appointment of judges. In the appointment of judges to the higher judiciary, there must be some form of, there must be a system. Now, we found that system was there with the 17th Amendment, but unfortunately with the 18th Amendment in place, we see that those policies are no longer there. You just have the Parliamentary Council approving. The Parliamentary Council is basically a rubber stamp for the President. But if you have a more effective mechanism of scrutinizing judicial appointments, then I think that will strengthen, in the long term, strengthen the independence of judiciary of this country.
That concludes our news edition. We meet you again with another news edition of News, Views and Entertainment from Boston and USA. Till then, goodbye.